Welcome back to the Bible and History. I'm Jeff Johnson, and with me, of course, is my mother, Rebecca Johnson. We're here today. We're going to continue talking about the pyramids. Now, there's a lot of interesting stuff about them, and we still haven't gone over all we want to, so we're going to continue talking about the pyramids today. So there's no scripture for this episode because the pyramids are not mentioned in the Bible. We talked about this, I think, a little bit last week. The children of Israel did not build the pyramids. They built the treasure cities. So the pyramids are not actually mentioned in the Bible. So that's important to remember, I think, and important to just keep in mind as you're reading the Bible and going through. Pay attention to those details. They are important. So let's get into this.
Exactly. Yes. Well, last time we talked about a lot of unique and wonderful information about the pyramids. They really are amazing structures.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have certainly loved to have seen them before the cover stones were taken off. They must have been just absolutely stunning. Well, today what I want to talk about with the pyramids are some of the ideas out there. Now, not the idea that the aliens built the pyramid, not that idea, but some of the things that people have noted about the pyramids and what is thought that they actually were for. Now, I'm sure you've heard that they were tombs for the pharaohs, and that the pharaohs got moved to some other tomb because of thieves and something like that. So here's the thing, though. Let's talk about that bit of the pyramid. There is a great group of people who, and I know some of them are really off the wall, but let's think it through, that would believe that the pyramids were not in fact tombs. I actually agree with this theory, and I'm going to explain why. When you see all the other tombs, like King Tutankhamun, King Tut as we call him, when they came to his tomb, when they came to all the other tombs, they photographed, and what did they find? A lot of paintings.
Mm-hmm.
Treasure rooms. They found rooms with lots of hieroglyphs, very highly decorated, and they found a sarcophagus. The thing is that in the Great Pyramids, there are no paintings.
Mm-hmm.
There are no decorations of any kind. There is only one room with a shaft out, which you would have needed, as you built, you would have needed an existential shaft for air for those working in, as you came up in.
Yep.
But predominantly there is nothing that would indicate this was in fact a tomb. So that's interesting. Furthermore, under the pyramid was a series of like labyrinth waterways. And water is a great conductor of electricity.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you don't want to drop your hairdryer, although now they have a switch that will stop it instantly. But back in the day, you didn't want to drop your hairdryer in the bathtub because you'd get electrocuted. Because water conducts electricity. So, it is very interesting to note these things because there is the idea that the pyramid was in fact something similar to Tesla's free electricity module.
Yes.
We know Tesla was working on that. Now, let's be frank. We're never going to have free electricity. Why? Not because it's not possible, but because they can't get rich off of us if it's free, guys. So it's not a matter of this isn't a possibility yet. We're still working on it. Tesla didn't work it out. It is a matter of Tesla did work it out. You can get electricity for free, but for heaven's sake, why would you if NIPSCO and I'm in Brazil, so Eletropolo, if all these companies can charge me through the nose, and they do, for my electricity, they dead sure aren't going to give it to me for free, which would put them out of business.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to remember that when we think about these things. Now, I don't know if I mentioned it. Going to look here, how far away. Yes. It is said in historical writings that the pyramid was so brilliant that it could be seen from the mountains of Israel,
Yeah.
hundreds of miles away. Now, granted, it wasn't Israel at the time, I understand that. But from what is modern day Israel, you could see the pyramid shining. Now,
Which is, that's a
That's-
very huge distance.
yes, it is.
And you're crossing the entire country of Egypt and into Israel through the Gaza Strip and all that kind of stuff. So that's a massive distance to be able to see that from, which is incredible.
Yes.
And it means that something more than just a shiny surface was occurring.
Yes, I agree, totally. Yes, there is something to be said about shiny surfaces, but to reflect that far is pretty amazing. It was also said that it gave off a feeling of happiness and goodness. Obviously, if something's glowing at night and it's dark everywhere else and there are no lights, supposedly, you would feel safer. Mm-hmm. Now, the thing that's interesting here, and like I said, this is not agreed upon across all Egyptology, not in Egyptology at all, but among archaeologists and things, but there is a group. Now, no, I do not think it has something to do with mysticism or the spirits. I think it's just technology that we don't use and have forgotten. I think there's so much technology that we've forgotten, and we think we're so advanced, but we're not. Now, there's a couple of interesting things that have been discovered around Egypt. Some of them have actually now been covered up by the Egyptian government and by the head Egyptologists because it would debunk the theory of evolution. And that's very interesting to me because even though it's archaeology and Egyptology, it is still completely linked and tied into evolution. They want you to think we're better now than we are. And than we were, and of course that's not true. So here's a couple other things that would help make me think that the pyramids themselves were perhaps like Tesla's free energy conduit. They have found and recreated light bulbs carved into the walls of some of the temples and tombs in Egypt. Mm-hmm. And I find that fascinating. And the light bulbs work. So they recreated the image and they actually function. They are functioning light bulbs, which means Egypt had electricity.
Yeah.
We just can't, we have it so
we
stuck
can't
in our
accept
head.
that. Yeah, we can't accept that they had any form of any technology, really. Because even as Christians, we've got it in our heads that, back then they couldn't have that technology. And I know we've been harking on this a lot, but it is so ingrained in our head that saying it 3 times doesn't matter. We got to drill this into our heads. They had technology, and we have proof that they had technology, and not primitive technology. They had electricity, light bulbs, all kinds of machine cutting, whatever you want to point to today. They probably had, not exactly like we had, but some variation of it that was equivalent to what we have today.
Exactly. And I agree. We need to get this in our head. Stop thinking that we are the peak of civilization. We're not so peaky. We're kind of peaked.
And the Bible does say,
apart.
The Bible does say specifically, there is nothing new under the sun.
Oh, exactly.
And that's not just human emotion, that's not whatever. That's talking about anything and everything, which includes technology. What we have today has been in the past.
Yes.
And we lost it and are rediscovering it.
Right. Now, here's something interesting on that note. There was a spot in, now I can't remember which temple, that showed something that really you almost can't doubt that it was a helicopter. It looked very similar to an Apache. and a submarine.
Mhm.
It was off the beaten path. It wasn't your normal tourist trap location for Egypt. A little bit more work. Some of the things that prove that Egypt was more advanced at the time, that Egypt has an incredible past that was far more advanced than we would be led to believe, require a little more effort to get to.
Yeah.
We tend to just focus on, of course, in these last few years of 2020 and 2021, not many people have traveled, but before that, people went to the Great Pyramids, the Temple of Sokar, very specific, touristy, easy to get to, and that's the reason. Locations. Typically, they're right off the River Nile. They're easy to access. And so they're the more viewed things. But we have to remember that Egypt was a massive country.
Yeah.
And so a lot of things that the average tourist doesn't go to have information that is very important. And so it's the intrepid Egyptologist who's just determined to go who will trek out sometimes days into the desert to get to these sites. And one such site held this image of a helicopter and a submarine. Now, since it has been widely advertised and shown, the Egyptian government actually kept it. Now, why would they do such a thing? Other than the fact that we have to stick to the mantra of evolution.
Mm-hmm.
There is no other reason. As an Egyptologist, as Egyptians, it would seem to me you would be very proud of this and you'd want to exploit this fact. But when all of the academic society is pressuring you to hide anything that would show advanced society because it would debunk the religion of evolution, you would, in fact, rather than celebrate your history, you would cover your history up, and that's happened in many countries around the world.
Yeah.
So we need to be aware of that as Christians, that the religion of evolution is so incredibly strong. It is the one universal religion.
Mm-hmm.
People who are part of other religions believe in the religion of evolution.
Yeah.
We don't call it a religion, we call it science. But the truth of the matter is, it's as much a religion as Catholicism, Mormonism, Muslims. It is all religious.
Mm.
It is a firm belief, and it requires a massive amount of faith, and they have no proof.
We have to remember
so
also.
be aware of that.
Yeah, we have to remember also Satan is actively attempting to cover up the Bible,
Right.
to make the Bible false in our eyes. Not that the Bible is false, but to make it appear false. So he's going to use all kinds of different things to influence all kinds of people in all kinds of ways. And a part of that is science. Science, in its actuality, does not hide facts. Science
Right.
observes the facts and is based on the facts. Evolution is not. There's a lot of good science out there. We're not saying that all science is bad. We're saying that science that ignores the facts that are presented or hides facts in order to achieve its desired result. That's not science.
Exactly.
That is a man putting a belief ahead of the facts that are presented to him, the science. Bible completely agrees with all true science. Bible and science do not contradict each other. Bible and archaeology do not contradict each other. The Bible and anything do not contradict each other when in their true form. Bible and archaeology, science, history, all of it. It's all accurate. We might not have the evidence either because it got hidden or because it's still buried somewhere or because that history got destroyed. But the Bible agrees with that all, and Satan is actively trying to remove that, and he influences people to, like in this case, hide things. and he's been doing it throughout all of history. So a lot of this old technology, he's been covering this up for centuries.
Oh yeah.
I know a part of Egypt history is that if a pharaoh was dishonorably killed or a rival came up into power, he'd erase that man's history from the records, and
Yes.
so he'd carve
Yes,
out,
he
destroy
would.
faces,
Yeah.
tear down images. So a lot of Egyptian history is completely destroyed, even back in the day, which I believe is part of Satan's work, and that's, we see that then, we see that now. It's been throughout all of history.
Yes.
We're always reworking the past to make ourselves look better, or to
It's
make
so
somebody
true.
else look worse.
Right.
And it's a very common theme, and it happens all across the world, and it's happening today. And we have to remember that Satan's hiding things from us. And those who are hiding those things are still working by faith in what they believe. They're hiding things to prove a point.
Yes. Yes, absolutely. I totally agree with you. And Egypt is such a perfect example of what you're saying, because throughout its history, so many times the truth has been covered up and hidden. And we have been so brainwashed and programmed into believing things. Another thing that they've pointed out, people who work with tools such as lathes and laser cutters and things have pointed out, even in Egypt, as you look at the construction of many of the tombs that even tourists will go to, they're cut out not by chisel and hammer, which is what we have so been programmed to believe, that they sat there with a chisel and hammer and they did all this intricate detail. And yet, a couple of years ago, my husband and I were at Shipshewana, and we decided, which is a great place in Indiana. If you have not been, it's tons of fun. You should go. But we were at a store that had a laser printer type thing that burned into the wood your name or whatever you wanted. And it literally takes minutes. And you have to stop and wonder, when you see intricately designed things on a mass productive scale.
Yeah.
There are things that I agree were made by hand, and you can make really intricate and beautiful things by hand. But there were things that were done on a mass produced scale, and saying that everything there was done by workmen and their little chisels and hammers kind of is silly almost. If we thought about that today, let's build the pyramid and let's have 50 statues that are exactly the same, lining something of Anubis or one of the gods. And we have to do this from the time that the Pharaoh gets into office and before he dies. So 1, 2, 3, go. And you're telling me each one was chiseled out by hand. I think that it really almost becomes ludicrous to think this way. People who have worked with these things have pointed out that there is no way. Many of the things that we see in Egypt, in ancient Egypt, were done by machines. And like Jeff said, we may not notice what the machine looked like. Yeah. It is probably a variation we haven't seen, so we wouldn't recognize it if we saw it. We expect everything to be very metal and things, and it could have been a different style. Yeah. But it doesn't mean it wasn't there. So don't let Satan trick you into thinking that evolutionary viewpoints in archaeology and history are correct. you may be a person who firmly believes in evolution versus science. Sorry about my cuckoo clock again. But you may understand that evolution is not part of science, but it is also not part of history. So don't get nabbed into that.
Yeah.
So our time, obviously, because my cuckoo talked, is up. But I do want to say next week we're going to talk a little bit more about other parts of the world outside of Egypt. We've kind of parked here in Egypt a little bit. Remember, things are happening all over the world, not one country at a time. So we're going to talk more about that next time.
Yeah, so we hope you'll join us.
Looking forward to it.
Yeah, we hope you enjoyed this week's episode, even if it was a bit of ranting. We enjoyed it. We hope you did. We hope you'll join us next week as we progress out of Egypt and out of the pyramids and all that, and get back to the world history that we are here to talk about. So join us next week. We'll look forward to seeing you there.
If you enjoyed today's video, please like and subscribe to our channel.
You can also follow us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Audible, and Google Podcasts.